What's up, Team Tobias? What's up, Burleson, Texas? We're here for Quelling Your Query Conundrum. Holy, I said it right. I've gotten really good. I'm Lane Haymont. That's hilarious. I said Lane. That is so funny. Chelsea, can you keep that in because that's perfect. I'm Lane Haymont. This is Jackie Lipton, and this is Ann Rose. And funny story. So Stephanie Rosacito in Slack always says, "Hey, L." And I'm always like, why is she calling me L? Then I'm like, oh, I sign all my emails L because if I put Lane, it shows up as lame or land.
It autocorrects.
Yes, it autocorrects as lame or land. And I'm just like, I'm signing L.
That's fair.
So I don't even connect that I literally signed my name L. I just I'm too lazy to fight with autocorrect.
I mean, sometimes it's just a duck is a duck is a duck, you know?
I guess. Anyway, this is the Ann Rose show. So Ann Rose, take it away.
It is not the Ann Rose show, but it is Quelling Your Query Conundrums. And we do have a query that an author is having conundrums about. So we're going to share it with you. And hopefully together, all of us will help this author make the perfect query. So let's get right into it. Dear X. I don't know. I kind of like that. Dear X. I noticed on your manuscript wish list that you were looking for XYZ and XYZ. So this person is obviously kind of just prepping themselves for something that's going to be personalized later. Perfect. Because of this, I'm submitting my book title for which I am seeking representation. It is a historical fantasy novel complete at 90,000 words and set in the ancient Roman world, told from 3 points of view. This book is for readers of popular books set in the Greco-Roman setting, such as The Will of the Many by James Islington, The Wolf Den by Elodine Harper, and Ariande by Jennifer Saint. I'm sure I said all of that wrong. As well as anyone who enjoys the recent Gladiator 2 movie. It has been 5 years since Posthuma's infamous temper finally got her exiled. When news arrives that her sister was killed, the man to blame is a demagogue who was ordered by the gods to marry a human descendant of Venus. Since he is still short a wife, Posthuma knows he is coming for her next. As soon as the demagogue Titus arrives, Posthuma elopes with someone else in an attempt to avoid marrying Titus. Outraged that she messed with their plans, the gods forced Posthuma and her new husband to join Titus's crew to help complete the remaining tasks in Titus's prophecy before they can be free. With her new proximity to Titus, Posthuma vows to avenge her sister's death and stop Titus from claiming the new empire the gods have promised him if he fulfills his prophecy. However, Titus's reckless nature sabotages his goals when he kills a son of Neptune, and much of Olympus rescinds its support for him. His remaining divine allies rely on Posthuma, shipwrecked on an island, to do their bidding and rescue him. Fed up with the gods' authority, she chose to use the very trait that got her exiled, her offense, and possibly divinely inherited anger, as a source of power to refuse the call of the gods and survive the consequences. This is my debut novel. Personalization of who they are and why they wrote it. Best wishes, author. So that was it. Does anyone here know what this story is about?
Well, I assume it's about demigods trying to overthrow the gods, and someone's on an island and expects other people to do his work, particularly a woman demigod, maybe?
I think she might just be a woman. I don't think she's a demigod, but I could be wrong. I think my response to the general question is we have a lot of information about the story, and to some extent, I know what the protagonist's external stakes are, partly avenging the sister and partly not wanting to answer a call in the second half of the manuscript. The problem for me there, or the challenge, is I don't really know the internal stakes, which I think often goes hand in hand with fantasy. Like sometimes fantasy is just action and lots of stuff happening, but I'm personally more of a character-driven reader. So I do at least want a hint of, not just that this is about revenge or this is about, this concrete thing. I sort of want to know why I'm going to buy into this particular character's story, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I am in the camp of I have no idea what I just read.
Mm-hmm. And I think I may only be guessing at what I said because I know mythology and it's very much about, Greco-Roman is like gods overthrowing titans, titans overthrowing gods, demigods overthrowing gods. So I may have literally accidentally guessed correctly about what some part of it is about.
I mean, I think that's a good question. If you read this more often than obviously I do, like, does this sound like a very familiar plot for this type of story?
Yeah, it's literally, I think, from what I gathered, the same plot of actual mythology, like warring against the gods. I mean, that's what Clash of the Titans was, which was a great movie, the older one. It's like the scene where he's fighting Medusa and she's turning dudes to stone. I mean, that's just a cool scene. But yes, I think wasn't that Odysseus?
Well, it does. The second part, at least, being on the island and trying to resist the call. I mean, that sounds a lot like Circe.
Yes.
And should we go through this?
Yes.
Step by step? Okay, we'll start from the beginning. I noticed on your manuscript wish list that you were looking for XYZ and XYZ. Because of this, I'm submitting my book title, for which I am seeking representation. It is a historical fantasy novel complete at 90,000 words and set in the ancient Rome from 3 points of view. This book is for readers of popular books set in the Greco-Roman setting, such as The Will of the Many by James Islington, The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper, and Ari by Jennifer Saint, as well as anyone who enjoyed the recent Gladiator 2 movie.
So I wonder if Gladiator 2 movie, if there's any gladiators in it, or they just threw that in because it was Greco-Roman. I mean, that's Roman, but I mean, Greece and Rome are obviously two different things, but I get what they're saying. I don't know. How does Gladiator 2 play in?
I mean, it does sound to me a little bit, and again, this is not an area, like I read it occasionally, but I don't really rep it. It does sound kind of like throwing in a bunch of titles in the genre that maybe aren't reflecting this story as well as they could be, because if you put, like, I think it's Ariadne might be the third book, and then there's Gladiator, and they're within that same genre, but they're different kinds of stories within that genre.
That is probably how you pronounce that. Yes. Very good, Jackie. Thank you for understanding my blubbering. I think what the disconnect for me is that I didn't watch the first Gladiator, and so I'm definitely not watching the second Gladiator. It's just not my jam. Like, this is just not for me.
What we're saying, all of us, I think, is we're probably not the right agency for this piece, which is not necessarily a criticism of the query letter, unless you're going for an agent who you want to rep your work more broadly, in which case you may want to make the specific a little more accessible. You may want to be a little bit more specific about how your comps are the same but different. You may want to be a little bit more specific about why we should engage with this character. But if you really just want to send to agents who really get this stuff, then you can ignore a lot of what we're saying, because we're all saying, well, we're not really the right agent.
Right. But I do think that you bring up a valid point, which is like the hook, right? Like, because I do get queries like this, and I have seen these stories before, and they do feel very like just reminiscent of like historical times and stories that we've heard 100 times before. So what is the hook? What is the difference here in this story? And maybe it is somewhere broken down in this. So maybe we should go to the next paragraph. Okay.
The plan.
Been 5 years since Postuma's famous temper finally got her exiled. When news arrives that her sister was killed, the man to blame is a demigod, who was ordered by the gods to marry a human descendant of Venus. Since he is still short a wife, Postuma knows he is coming for her next.
Why did that have to do with anything? Why does he kill the sister because he has to marry human? I mean, did she not want to marry? Then he murders her? Because that would be wildly something I'm not going to touch.
And why is he coming for the protagonist? I think there's a little bit of connective tissue that's missing there, that we can't see the link between X, Y, and Z.
It's what Anne Rose always says, is that she's not in my head. So there's some connection there that this person knows and no one else does. And I do that all the time. So I get it. I just want to know.
Maybe Postuma is like the last option. That's the only thing I can come to here. But I agree with you both that I don't really quite understand the connection. As soon as the demigod Titus arrives, Postuma elopes with someone else in an attempt to avoid marrying Titus. Outraged that she messed with their plans, the gods force Postuma and her new husband to join Titus's crew to help complete the remaining task in Titus's prophecy before they can be free. With her new proximity to Titus, Postuma vows to avenge her sister's death and stop Titus from claiming the new empire the gods have promised him if he fulfills his prophecy.
And I have a question about whose story this is, because we think it's Postuma. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But then there's this whole story involving Titus. And I mean, when you think about whose story it is, like whose goals and quest are we following? And we started with one, and now we've brought in, well, this is what Titus wants and this is what he's fighting for. And she's now sort of got subsumed in this thing. So I'm confused, but I'm sort of confused about whose story it is and why I'm following it.
I mean, the author does make a point to say that it is told in 3 points of view, but it's a good question. Like, why? But why is the story told in 3 points of view? Do we need all these points of view? Do we need to understand Titus, for example? Because I'm getting the feeling that Titus is a point of view character, Postuma is a character, and then I'm not sure who the third one is.
And that makes me think about the query in that we're told it's 3 point of views, and that leads to whose story it is, because in a query you want, I think at least you want 1 point of view character, unless it's romance and then, dual point of view. That makes sense. But for fantasy, I mean, you don't want to tell us 3 different people's 3 different stories, I don't think. I mean, you want to focus on one character and tell us the story from their point of view, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this begs the question to me, and, obviously I haven't read the pages, but why would it be 3 separate points of view rather than, say, third person omniscient? Like, if you need all of those strands of the story for the story to work, there are plenty of examples with multi POV. I mean, Game of Thrones, I think, does limited third, doesn't it, when it jumps back and forth, but it feels omniscient because it feels like you have to know all of this stuff. So, like, I'm a little confused.
Well, I first, I'm not sure I think it's fair to say George R.R. Martin, right?
Sorry.
Because like he can do whatever the hell he wants, right?
Well,
So if this is a debut novel, I think that doing an omniscient point of view can be very challenging, because I think Lane is right in the sense that, or maybe it was you, Jackie, that you read for character, right? And so if we're not getting any depth of any of the characters, we might find it harder to connect with. And if it's not an author that we're familiar with, are we going to trust them to carry us through this entire story? So I think that Omniscient in a debut is challenging.
I think it's important to give credit. So that was Jackie, because that sounds way too smart and intellectual for me to have said.
So I don't know. I don't know whose story it is, and while I agree that like every character in a story, even if they don't get a point of view, should be the hero of their own tale, right? Like, so they should be their own hero of their own story if the camera was to pan over to them. I'm not sure, do we need all of those in this story to understand this plot? I don't know, because I'm not exactly sure I understand what the plot is necessarily.
And why does he kill her sister?
I don't know.
And then he's like, "Oh, I'm coming for you to like marry you."
It's kind of gross.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that Greco-Roman mythology is pretty gross, but I mean, modern days, I think, we have to call it out on page as it happens, as Anne Rose always points out to us.
All right, last paragraph here. However, Titus's reckless nature sabotages his goals when he kills a son of Neptune, and much of Olympus rescinds its support for him. So here's where I think it shifts to like being completely Titus's story, which again, I'm not quite sure I understand. His remaining divine allies rely on Postuma, shipwrecked on an island, to do their bidding and rescue him. Fed up with the god's authority, she chooses to use the very trait that got her exiled, her offensive and possibly divinely inherited anger, as a source of power to refuse the call of the gods and survive the consequences. So again, now it shifts back again to her. So, but what are her stakes? I don't know. It feels like stakes for him in this moment, a rising action for her, but like, what are the overall stakes of the story? I'm confused.
Yeah, I guess one thing, and I noticed it both times you read this paragraph, and it's probably just saying the same thing differently. I'm not loving the woman with this divine anger that she may have inherited from the gods, who is trying desperately not to use her power, because I think, and this is more of a marketing thing, I guess, but I do think we're at a moment in time where editors may be more interested in seeing women taking action, particularly women who have divine powers. I'd rather see her use her power and misuse it and learn something from it than try not to use it, because it's kind of like, as soon as you're rooting for someone not to do something, that's like a negative desire line. That's like, where does the action and the interest for the reader come when you're saying, no, don't do this. You want the person to do it and like make a mistake or break things and then learn how to fix them. Or I do anyway.
And if she's a demigod, which, is the inference, which comes out of nowhere, why is he trying to marry her? Why would the gods let him try to marry her? Wouldn't they know? Because obviously one of them did something with a human and popped out another baby.
I didn't think she was one, but I don't know.
Well, it's the implication in that last paragraph that this anger she has might be a divine. Yeah.
So where else would you get it from except the gods?
Makes sense.
And goddesses and godettes and godders and all the godses.
Well, that was it. That was the query. So, writer, I think you're smarter than me. I think you're much smarter than me. So I'm not sure if this helped you with your query conundrums, or if they just made more conundrums for you. So people who are smarter than us, please leave some comments below for this amazing writer to help them with this query letter. Did it make sense to you? Is this your genre? Is this something you read a lot of? Did you follow this? Did you see what we're missing in this, perhaps? So this is where the community comes in, and hopefully they can help this wonderful writer with their query. And I do wish you the best of luck with this. It sounds like it's definitely something that you've researched and spent a lot of time in. So you know this story well. That is clear. We just aren't necessarily receiving the message. So maybe that's where the disconnect is.
And I'm all about the Greco-Roman time period just for a fantasy. I think that would be super cool. So that's Quelling Your Query Conundrums. Don't forget, April 30th, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, we have our live AMA. Me, Jackie, and Rose, Kelly Dyksterhouse. We may have a special guest. I don't know.
If you have questions for it, go ahead and also leave them in the chat so we can have those ready to go for our AMA coming up at the end of the month, right? So
yeah,
you don't have to wait till the last minute. You can go ahead and post them and we'll get them and make sure we get them answered, even if you can't attend with us.
And Anne, can you take us out, your lovely outro?
Well, that was another episode of Quelling Your Query Conundrums with me, Anne Rose, with Lane Haymont, and the wonderful Jackie Lipton. So if you have a query that you have conundrums about, send it in. Maybe we'll help you. Maybe we won't, but we'll all have fun trying. So until next time.